Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. We wanted to use tonight as an opportunity for the residents to better understand and to ask questions with regards to the two questions that will be on the upcoming ballot on November 8th with regards to borrowing $4.5 million to redo roads and $1.5 million to redo town buildings. With me tonight, we have our town engineers, Brian Asteriak and Don Smith, and also our financial advisor from William Blair, John Healy. So we're going to go through step by step tonight. Brian will first start and go over the road program. Then Don will follow up and talk about the buildings. And then finally, John will go through the financial structure, the bonds, and the financial outlook for the town going forward. If at any time anyone in the crowd has a question, please feel free to raise your hand and we can certainly address that, and then we'll do a more specific question and answer period at the end. So with that, I'm going to kick the meeting off by turning it over to Brian Asteriak and let him get started talking about the road program.
Thank you. Good evening. Again, my name is Brian Asteriak, one of the town engineers for roads. I started this job back in January, where one of the things that Mr. Miller wanted to do was take a look at the roads and prioritize what the future work should be. So we put together a plan which would address that. Essentially, what our ultimate goals of the study were going to be was, of course, providing long-term recommendations and planning, but we had to start with something. So we had to figure out what the current conditions of the roads were. So we decided to analyze all of the roads within the town system, which is over 280 roads and more than 82 miles. And ultimately, it came down to prioritizing and estimating the costs of the road work needed for the next 3 to 5 years and beyond. So what do? We went out to every road. We observed cracks, potholes, other surface defects. We noted the curbing, or if there wasn't any. We observed drainage flow patterns in the systems, such as the catch basins, the pipes, the outlets. And ultimately, we came up with a grading system, which we adopted from the American Society of Civil Engineers, from A through F, just like in school. So these are the types of things that we saw. Obviously, cracking, poor drainage flow on the left. There on the right, I don't know if you can see it, but actually it shows a relatively new road and a new catch basin, and the drainage is actually going behind the catch basin and around it. So those are the types of things that we took notice of. These are a couple other items. On the left there's Old Ansonia Road, which is just a dilapidated road that's been patched so many times and needed immediate repair. On the right, some alligator cracking. Ultimately, we put together a report which is available at Town Hall and online. This is hard to see, but it's in the report, and it color codes basically the condition of every road in town. Ultimately, the overall conditions of the town, almost half of the roads are in a condition grade of C or worse. About 12% are in condition D or F, which essentially need immediate attention. And the conditions across the board are varying. Some can use some crack sealing, others need mill and paving, and some need full depth replacements. So to date, before 2016, there was about 6.5 miles of roads replaced or repaved. This year, there's been a lot more work. We did the downtown area, which is currently being done, and it'll be completed by November 4th, which is the end of next week. We've also done some full-depth reconstruction on Charles, Mayfair, James, Hine, and Lane. And we've done some major section repairs, basically areas of a road that otherwise is in mediocre shape, but has some areas that need some major repair. So we did that on Skokerat, Pearl, Silvermine, Old Ansonia, and Laurel. We also just finished up some crack sealing, which was done on Skokerat, Bunting, Eleanor, Chatfield, and Silvermine. We had hoped that with the $50,000 that we spent towards crack sealing, it would go a little further, but frankly, there hasn't been any crack sealing in a long time, and it just didn't go as far as we thought. The plan, from what I understand, is to have that allocated in an annual budget, and maybe within 5 or 10 years we can catch up. Some of the things that were done this year, these are just some quick pictures. On the left there's a reclamation machine that basically grinds up the pavement, mixes it up with the sub-base below, and creates a base for the new pavement. On the right is a newly paved road with a new catch basin top. I think that's in Charles. We replaced a lot of catch basin tops, and then we paved up to them, obviously. Downtown work, most people probably can see, we replaced some dilapidated curbs. We replaced some dilapidated asphalt, sidewalks. We're currently milling. We almost got the milling done, and then next week we're going to end up paving it. On the left there, these are some of the major section repairs that we did, which we essentially just milled 2 inches, and then we replaced the pavement. In some cases, we had to kick that up to 3 inches because we found out that the existing roads only had 1.5 inches or 2 inches of existing asphalt, when 3 to 4 is what's recommended. On the right is some crack sealing that was done. I think that's up on Silver Mine. The plan for the future. Right now we have 3 separate areas of funding that some are in process, some are allocated. We currently have 4 applications in the process for a lot SIP grant, which is governed or is orchestrated through the Valley of Governments, right? Or the Council of Governments. But it's also overseen by the DOT. Those roads need full depth reconstruction, and they need to be brought up to the current codes. I believe the reimbursement is everything except for design fees. So we're doing that for Mountain Road, or a good portion of Mountain Road, a good portion of Bungay Road, Botsford Road, and Holbrook Road. There are specific roads that we can apply for, so we can't just pick any road and ask for this type of grant. If the bonding is approved, what we're talking about tonight, the immediate plan for next year would be a full depth reconstruction or a mill and repave around 5.5 miles of roads, many of which are high use. I'll go into which ones in a second. And then there's just the general proactive money that comes out of the general fund. That's going to go towards crack sealing, general maintenance of the roadways and repairs of the existing roads throughout town. So the plan for the bonding money would be for repaired or replaced the high-use roads, French, Mountain, Bunting, Colony, Bank, Columbus, and Bungay. And these are portions of Bungay that wouldn't, Bungay and Mountain that wouldn't be covered under the lot SIP plan. And some of the local roads would be also repaired, Renee, some of the Garden Street areas, North Main, Cherry, Curry Hill. That's a pretty bad one that needs it. And then crack sealing, we're just going to continue the crack sealing. In the report, there is a list and a priority list of crack sealing. These are some of the ones that we're going to attempt to get next year, depending on how far the crack sealing goes. And that's it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Brian?
The question, I don't know if that would have been picked up right.
Oh, yeah.
So the question was, what's the difference between full depth reconstruction and milling and repaving? So full depth reconstruction can be done in a variety of ways. One is that reclaiming, which is this thing. It grinds up the existing pavement. It mixes it up with the sub-base below, and then that's regraded and paved over it. That's a full depth reconstruction. The other way to do a full depth reconstruction is excavating out some of the base and the existing pavement, taking it off site, and then bringing in new base and putting in new asphalt. The advantage to using the reclamation is that you don't have to bring any material off site. Everything can stay on site. The disadvantage to it is you're going to have more material, so all the catch basins have to be raised. Some of the grading has to be adjusted, but ultimately ends up cheaper. You also have to rely on whatever base is there, so you have to make sure that there's a decent base to use a reclamation. Milling and paving, you really shouldn't be doing unless you have a decent base and a decent asphalt layer below. The advantage of milling and repaving would be that you're in and out in a few days, and there's very little disturbance. You can still drive after it's milled. They only mill down about 1.5 inches or 2, and then they just cover it over. You don't have to touch any of the catch basins unless they need it. The grades stay essentially the same. Ultimately, milling and repaving would be cheaper than reclamation. However, some roads just can't be milled and repaved, depending on their condition.
Okay, there any other questions? All right, just as a reminder, anyone who would like to take a look at what roads are scheduled to be done 2017, 18, and 19 can go to the website, and there is a list up there for people to review. And if you have questions, you can certainly reach out to Rory in my office. He would be more than happy to answer any questions, and if need be, we can have Brian get in touch with anyone that has those questions. So with that, we'll turn the meeting over to Don Smith, and Don's going to talk about the work we're going to do on our buildings, which is tied into the $1.5 million bond referendum question. So, Don?
Good evening, everyone. It's Donald Smith, I'm town engineer in charge of the buildings. And this work that we are proposing is following up some efforts of the... I turned that on. Sorry. Good evening. Donald Smith, town engineer in charge of the buildings. And tonight here we'll be presenting some of the existing conditions at Town Hall, the library, and police station, which are 3 of the buildings that have been identified by the Permanent Town Building Committee as being the priority buildings in town and needing some of the most important improvements. The initial estimates that we've prepared right now is Town Hall, approximately $650,000 in improvements. The police station, approximately $310,000, and the library, $433,000. And those are construction dollars. There'd be architectural and environmental fees of approximately $166,000, including a contingency. The estimated project total is $1.6 million, and we have already applied for a state library grant that, if that is successful, would be a return to the town of $112,500, netting us out at just over $1.5 million. These are the preliminary estimates that we have on the project. We have developed specific estimates for each of the building and the work that's required at each building. Here at the library, some of the initial improvements are basically energy efficiency and code improvements, and those are eligible for reimbursement, 50% reimbursement through a state library grant. And we have approximately 32 windows on the lower level that we would be replacing. There may or may not be some PCB abatement required for those windows, but we've included it at this point. The fire marshal has looked at the building and would like a stairwell that is currently not fire rated, would like to see that improved in terms of its fire rating. About 2 years ago, there was an energy audit done on the building, and all the light fixtures in the building were looked at, and an estimate put on replacement of the light fixtures, as well as some energy efficiency grants for that, approximately $30,000. The original exterior door and transom window from the building, dating back to 1958, is still in place and still in use, and that is proposed to be changed out, approximately $25,000. And then there's some small areas of asbestos floor tiles. Some of the other areas that are not eligible for the state library grant, some drywall repairs inside due to some water damage, ceiling tile repairs, maintenance replacement of some old downspouts, joint sealant at the 1993 windows, some masonry repairs, and lower level ventilation, all totaling about $250,000. Over at the police department, we've identified some roof repairs in the range of $75,000, including some additional snow guards. There's an insulation up in the attic that was never installed properly and needs to be in place, about $10,000 for that. There are some exterior drainage issues on the Stop and Shop side of the building, and we have looked at how we would be able to repair that and fix that, getting about another $10,000. There are some window wells and water infiltration to the lower level, the exercise room, so we've looking at some window wells and curtain drains around the building to identify that. There has been previous water damage in the building on the lower level that's compromised the stairwell that needs to be repaired. And then out in front of the police station, the front entry patio really was not designed properly or graded properly. It back pitches towards the building, bringing rainwater to the building and being the source of infiltration into the building. There are some sidewalks around the building that need to be replaced. Some of the building, when the building was reconstructed back in 2000, some masonry repointing that needs to be done, as well as some lintel replacements and some replacements to the entrance patio. And probably the biggest single unit on the list is a replacement of the 60-ton rooftop air conditioning unit at about $150,000, so totaling just over $300,000 at the police station. Town Hall again focusing on energy improvements, energy efficiency. All of the windows here in Town Hall are single pane windows. Some of them in the original building are dating back into the 60s, and even the newer windows the windows in the addition area are also single pane windows. So the proposal is to replace all of those windows with an insulated thermal pane window. We believe some of the windows in the original building may also have some PCB contamination, so we've included that in our budget. The original front door, the front door to the original portion of Town Hall, dates back many years as well, and is needs to be replaced, as is the transom over the window into the addition area. Mechanically, Town Hall, we're also looking at replacing the ventilation and air conditioning system in the addition area, approximately $240,000, as well as replacement of the boiler and a building management system to better control the heating and cooling in occupied and unoccupied times, totaling approximately $650,000. Here are some of the conditions that we have at the police station. One of the side entry doors, the sidewalk is actually pitching back towards the building and allowing water to run into the building in certain rainstorms, and it pitches back into the building. This is the front entry patio and rampway that we spoke of, and again, this pitches back towards the building to the right-hand side, allowing water to enter along the face of the building and coming into the lower level, into the exercise room and locker rooms that are here. There's a failed caulking joint here along the building, again, that's allowing that water infiltration. A little bit hard to see, but on the between the limestone blocks and underneath the limestone blocks, there's some mortar that is missing. This is a typical condition throughout the building, so we would be saw cutting out those joints and putting new mortar into those joints. Again, here on the right-hand side, at the bottom of the limestone, you can see the opening, also at the left-hand side. A close-up of that, the mortar is just failing, and in a proper rainstorm or rain-driven rain, it allows water to enter into the building, or at least into the wall cavity behind the masonry. We would be addressing this front entry signboard. All of the white efflorescence on it is due to a lack of some flashing at the very top level. So we'll be taking off the top course, installing some flashing, acid washing the wall and improving the appearance of that so it maintains its proper appearance as opposed to being all stained. Also, the inside of that wall, that white staining is all what we call efflorescence. There will also be the roof area, roof repairs. The 4 areas that are circled in red are 4 problematic areas that were not addressed a few years back when the remainder of the roof was done. So those 4 areas will be addressed. They're currently, 2 of them are currently leaking. And in the blue circle is that 60-ton rooftop unit that I spoke of that would be replaced. That furnishes the air conditioning and ventilation for both the first and second floor. This is, again, one of the active leak areas at the police station. The roof area, ponding, you can see all the discoloration due to the water sitting on the roofing and not being able to get out of the side scupper area. This is on the inside of that same picture, and it's a little bit hard to see, but the rust color, you can see a little bit of rust color on the bottom in that red cloud is water that runs underneath it and comes into the building. Just an overall view of one of those areas. They're very difficult to access, so that's part of the reason why that cost estimate was so high, was because these are 4 small areas and they're very difficult for the workers to be able to access. Again, the same, all the discoloration in the roofing. This is the top of the elevator shaft. This is inside of the attic area. Obviously, you can see some rusting and some deterioration. This is a site of some former prior water leakage. And also the wall on the left is one of the exterior walls that is should have been insulated or needs to be insulated. So we will be insulating that wall and stopping the water damage, water infiltration. And then down in the basement, this is one of the areas where the water infiltration in the basement has compromised the drywall and the stairwell and needs to be repaired. Again, this is the cost estimate for the police station. Over at the library, I think if you've been there, you're all familiar with the original entrance and stairwell. This is some wire glass, and this stairwell does not meet current life safety codes for fire separation. So those 5 windows would be taken out of the stairwell, and that would be the stairwell would be given a 1-hour fire rating. And additionally, the double doors and all of the glass area above them would all be replaced and reduced in terms of overall area and increased fire rating to improve the exit. These are the original doors on the west end of the building. Again, original to the building from 1958. The doors in this transom above it is all single pane windows, so they would be replaced with a thermal pane window. The column on the right is, again, right near that old original front door. I think you can see some of the cracking that's happening in the lower section of that column. We're not quite sure what's happening, but that whole column will be coming down and will need to be reconstructed. There's more of a close-up view of some of the cracks in that column. Also, up higher on that column is some of the brick is chipped and spalling off, which just indicates some movement or some water that's getting in behind the brick and freezing. These glass block windows would be cut out and would be replaced. And then all of the lower level windows, there's approximately 32 of them. All of the lower level windows, again, are original to the building, and they would be removed and replaced with a higher energy efficiency window. The windows above had been replaced back in 2004 with funding through the Catherine Matthews Foundation. Again, the smaller windows on the bottom would be replaced. As well, smaller ones on the bottom will be replaced. The ones on the top had been replaced with funding from Catherine Matthews. Just the side elevation of the building. Some of the The addition that was put onto the building, there's some work that's needed with that. Recaulking of all of those windows, that was done in 1993. So we're approaching 25 years on those, or that addition. There's some work with the windows that needs to be recaulked and some cornice repairs. Here you can see the cornice repair that needs to be done. Nothing too major. That as well. And then recaulking of those windows. And then lastly, here at Town Hall, again, the original main entry into the original section of Town Hall, that door, set of double doors and all of the glass all around it, just needs to be replaced. The transom window above the entry door into the addition needs to be replaced. The door itself and the side lights has previously been replaced, but not the window above, so we'll catch up with that. Just some of the deterioration on the window and the rotting of that windowsill. These are all the single pane windows in the addition. They're a rather large window. It was 5 feet wide by 9 feet high. And same windows in the original part of the building. The lower level windows here in the main meeting room, then they've all have some deterioration and some rot down the lower sections of them, so they would all be replaced. And those are also single pane windows from 1988. The original windows. A little bit of brickwork needs to be repointed on the front entryway. It's a little hard to make out in this picture, but there's some repointing that's needed there to keep the moisture out. And then our lovely cupola was repaired back in 2015 and still looks really good up on the top of Town Hall. That's really good things. And just an overall view of the end of the building. The side lights on that lower level door will be replaced. The door again had been replaced, but not the side lights. Seen better days. Some minor roof repair that we'll take care of. And again, that's the estimate for Town Hall, approximately $650,000. Again, summarizing Town Hall, $650,000, the police station, approximately $310, the library, $433, giving us approximately $1.4 million in construction, adding architectural, engineering, and environmental fees, that brings us a little over 1.5. 4% contingency has been included, and then credit back out the library grant if successful should be about 1.5. Any questions?
About $1.5 million. There, people voted this down. Is there any way to quantify that? Like, if they vote no, then the next year the bill, each year in addition will be $3 million, or is there actually project that out to the future?
Certainly the cost will go up. I don't think it will double in 1 year, but the costs certainly will go up. The reason the number really is so high is just it's been a number of years and lack of maintenance over a course of number of years, and we really need to catch up. So it's really important that all of these buildings get this money. We were talking windows from 1958 on the library that have never been replaced. So some of this work is way past due, and it really needs to be done.
You know, on top of, too, the work itself, we're in a very good, and John will talk about this in a few minutes, we're in a very good interest rate environment. Who knows what could potentially happen in a year, 2, 3 years. So it's probably best that we take advantage of these historically low interest rates and try to get as much work done as we possibly can now and not wait.
So the question of like, I don't know, this stuff, and other priorities in the budget, that would be more important.
I can't speak to what previous first selectmen, what previous boards had done. It was something that we identified as a priority, and we've been working over the last 5 years to get this stuff done. I think a lot of it had to do with budgets and people being concerned about putting money in the budget, but we enacted this plan. The Building committee spent a tremendous amount of time working on this, and we have the game plan going forward. So while we are doing all this work, we're doing it with really no impact to taxes for the residents, and John will actually explain a lot of it. As debt is falling off, we're replacing that debt with new, cheaper debt. So we're going to get all this work accomplished and, in a very advantageous way for the residents. Yes, we have the Standing Building Committee, whose job it is to essentially manage the buildings, so keep an eye on what needs to be done, set priorities. These people are all hand-picked. They're all professionals that are in those types of fields. They're architects, they're engineers, so they know what they're looking at. So they're the ones that are going to be responsible for not only working through this process, but then setting the course for what we'll do in 2018 and beyond.
Some of the problems at the police station, yes, are due to the fact of the original construction and trying to, yes, change that roofing system and take some pitches that were going one way and making water go the other way. So they did end up with some awkward spaces.
Yeah.
With the library, the original doors, they have to remain doors for fire access because
No, that is one of the main exits out of the lower level, so that would remain an exit way.
Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, with that, we're going to turn the meeting over to John Healy from William Blair, the town's financial advisor. John will talk a little bit about the current interest rate environment, our debt service, and what we'll be looking at in the coming years. So, John?
Thank you, and good evening to everyone. As the town's financial advisor, we have a fiduciary duty to the town and to the people of the town to make sure that you're getting the lowest cost of capital, that you're getting the lowest possible rates in the market, and that the decisions made to incur these obligations long term are timed properly, and that in the course of the town's financial planning and everything, that it is the least impactful to the residents. So when we look at plans to do some of these critical or make these investments in critical infrastructure, the question is, for us, is it the right time? And so before answering that question, as the first selectman indicated, I think it'd probably be best to go through where the market is today, and then talk briefly about what the town's position would be to take on this debt with the least amount of impact to the residents of Seymour. So, as alluded to by the first selectman, we have seen over the past several years since the collapse of 2008 historically low rates. I think everybody is at this point pretty well aware of it. If you look on the chart, that solid navy, might show up as black, navy blue line has, as you can see, from 2009 until 2016 was flat. We were at or near zero. That's the Fed funds rate. That's the recommended rate by the Federal Reserve that banks charge each other for overnight loans, and it's one of the biggest indicators in the market. You can see that that is at 0. If you've been following it lately, you'll know that in December of last year, you could see right around January of 2016, you see that small little uptick, so that after several years of at or near 0 rates, the Fed finally increased the Fed funds rate by 25 basis points last December. And then there was an expectation that we were going to have somewhere between 2 and 4 increases this year, which we haven't seen yet. And only now have we started to see or hear the chatter that we may be looking at a rate increase in December. We've got a Fed meeting next week where we expect to get some indications, but right now the Wall Street money is on a Fed rate increase in December and then supplemental increases throughout 2017. Now, a lot of that's also going to depend on what happens with the national election, because you've got 2 candidates who have different ideas for the Fed. So without going too far into that, it underscores the point that anyone who says they know what markets are going to do next month, next year, in 5 years, doesn't know what they're talking about. Nobody has a crystal ball, and so we have to deal with the trends as we see them here. So if you look at the light blue line, the one that's indicated as the BBI 20, that's an average of 20 AA rated municipal credits. And it is the kind of the standard that's used to measure where tax-exempt debt, such as Town of Seymour general obligation bonds, would be tracking. Now, the town, thanks to sound financial management by the first selectman and the team here in City Hall, the Town of Seymour is a very highly rated AA+. So your rates are going to come in under the BBI 20, or they should come in under the BBI 20. The green line is the 10-year Treasury, and the 10-year Treasury is used as the barometer for taxable bonds. Now, from time immemorial, as you can see going back, taxable bonds were always yielding higher interest rates than tax-exempt. But what we've seen, again, since 2008 is an inversion. So taxable bonds are actually a little bit cheaper in a lot of respects than tax-exempts. So that's a plug to those people listening. We say it to all our clients, municipal clients, that if you've been putting off incurring taxable debt, which would be debt used for economic development or things that would have commercial end users, now is a great time to look at it. But basically what this chart shows is you've got basement rates from the Fed and historically low rates for both tax-exempt and taxable debt. This slide basically shows the same thing, except it throws in the SIFMA index there, and basically that is more geared towards short-term rates. So you can see short-term rates had been very, very low for a long period of time, and now we've seen them. If you look over in the far bottom right-hand corner, you can see that they've now jumped over the Fed funds rate, and we'll get more into that in a second, but what we have seen is a steepening of the curve, which means it's pricier to issue debt short-term than it is long-term. It's in the longer maturities where you're actually going to see the savings over prior years. Again, a similar illustration, but this shows the 20-year AAA MMD and the 10-year AAA MMD. Now, the MMD is the standard by which bond transactions are measured. It is where AAA rated credits should price on a given day. And like I said, the Town of Seymour is a very highly rated AA+, just sniffing AAA territory. And so if the town were to go out and incur this debt, we expect that it would be somewhere in the neighborhood of those the top number there, because these bonds would be issued over 20 years. This, I know, is one of the first selectman's favorite charts. This is the municipal yield curve, and this best illustrates what I was just talking about. So if you look at the light green line, which for the majority of the graph is the bottom spaghetti strand, That is the current yield curve that we are on. And you can see that right now it is actually in the short term, years 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 5, is appreciably higher than its counterparts in prior years. And it's only when you get out beyond year 5 that you really see how low the long-term rates are. And what that drives home for me as a financial advisor is, you often get the question, bless you, you often get the question, why shouldn't we issue, bless you, short-term notes, short-term financing, because it's been done in the past. So, some towns will go out and issue bond anticipation notes to fund projects today, wait until the market is right, and then convert those notes to long-term bonds when they feel that the rates are in their favor. And as you can see, for a lot of years, in recent past, those rates were very low. Now we're looking at a situation where it makes a lot of sense to, if you've got the authorization, you know the projects you want to do, the town agrees that they're of critical importance, like roads and buildings, that now is the time to lock in those rates over the long term, because every indicator has been that rates are going up. The other thing that we have to consider in the state of Connecticut, and that we as an investment bank have seen this as recently as yesterday, when we were pricing a deal for another Connecticut municipality, are the headwinds that have been created by the headline risk of the state of Connecticut's financial news and the city of Hartford's financial news. And so the marketplace itself has gotten a little spooked on Connecticut paper in general. And my concern is, for issuers like the town of Seymour, I don't see a endpoint to that in the short term. And, like we just talked about, we have an election coming up. There's likely to be financial news about the fiscal health of the state coming up sometime between Election Day and the start of the legislative session. I don't know what that news will be, but it probably isn't going to be great. And so my worry is that the long-term outlook or the midterm outlook for state issuers, municipalities like Seymour, is that they're all going to be affected by that headline risk. So the sooner you're able to enter the market and avail yourself of these long-term rates, the better it's going to be. One of the other things that the town has been very, very savvy on has been monitoring its existing debt. We just got done with a belabored discussion about how low rates have been. Well, the town of Seymour, all along, prior administrations, for many, many, many years, has been incurring these long-term obligations. And as you can imagine from those graphs that we just looked at, the rates that were locked in at those times were substantially higher than the rates we've seen recently. And so, in working with the first selectman and his finance team, we have been able to go back and refund some of that higher rated debt in order to generate substantial present value savings for the town. And rather than put that savings into the general fund or into one-shots or things like that, so that it's gone in one fell swoop, the first selectman and his team have been very good at using the savings generated by those prior issues in order to smooth the impact of new debt coming on, so that the town of Seymour is continuing to make those critical investments in infrastructure by having the least amount of impact on existing debt service. And that is something that we would look to continue to do, while we do expect that rates may track up in 2017. We don't know how much, and so we will continue monitoring the existing debt. The town has two tranches of bonds that were issued in 2011 and again in 2013 that as of today would be what we would consider to be 50 to 60% efficient. We typically will not give the thumbs up to the town on a refunding transaction unless something is 70% or more efficient. But the longer the town waits to refund, the more efficient the transaction becomes as you get closer to the call date. So we have a hope that in 2017 that there'll be some efficient refunding transactions that that the town will be able to engage in that will allow for present value savings to come into the accounts and smooth the impact of this new issue that was been discussed here tonight, so that you can get all the benefit with having the least amount of impact. And just to touch on what the first selectman had alluded to before, one of the town's greatest strengths is the rapid amortization of its debt. So if the town were to incur no new obligations over the next 10 years, over 80% of its existing debt would be gone. That's how fast debt's coming off the books in the town, which is a sign of a very fiscally healthy municipality. So it also means that you've got a lot of capacity to be able to take on this new debt, again, make those investments in critical infrastructure that, frankly, a lot of other peer communities don't have the flexibility to be able to do because of past decisions that have been made. And so we think Seymour is in an enviable position to be able to take on these new obligations and do it very successfully.
Excellent, thank you, John. Are there any questions for John with regards to the finances?
I don't know if this might be a question for you. You said like the debt falling off, books as of Q3. So if this, people voted no on this, would the mill rate go down?
Theoretically, yes. But again, we'd be pushing needed projects off until a later date when they could be potentially more expensive in just their cost and absolutely more expensive with the finance of these things. So, you know, if that were, I would argue that would be penny wise and pound foolish at this point to do that. You know, as John had mentioned, we have the capacity. We're in very good financial shape. We need to make these investments in our infrastructure and continue to do so over the coming years to get ourselves caught up to where we should be as a town.
I mean, one of the things, Ethan, that you know we often say to a lot of our clients is towns, as opposed to you know businesses large and small, towns don't have the ability to just close up shop. You know, you still have to provide roads. Those roads still have to be safe and clear. You still have to provide police and fire. You still have to provide an education. And so putting off those investments, you know, if this were a debate on something that less critical, I can absolutely see the you know the thinking behind it. But the town has been very good about making sure that when it does incur these long-term obligations, that it's investing in really critical infrastructure. And I can't stress enough, there are a lot of towns that don't have the ability to make, either don't have the ability or don't have the willingness to make that investment, and I think that that's something that sets Seymour apart.
Any other questions? Not only for John, but anything else for Brian or for Don? No? All right, well, with that, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight, for spending the time, for all of you that did come out. It was great to see such a large turnout. This will also be posted on the town's website. We'll put it up on Facebook, so anyone who was unable to attend will absolutely be able to watch the meeting, so please let your friends and family know. And again, all of the information will be available on the website. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out. And just as a reminder, on Election Day, the 2 referendum questions will be at the top of the ballot, so they will be above the position where you vote for the president. Will be question 1, and just to the right of that will be question 2. If you are not sure or have any questions, please ask one of the election moderators, and they will be more than happy to assist you. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming out.